Great. So thanks everybody for joining today's session. It's a tough time, so I hope everybody is safe and family is also all doing well for all the people on this call. Today's session, what we are planning to do is to discuss how to build or what all are the experiences, tricks of trade on trying to build global brands from India. The format, as usual, is about an hour-long session. For the first 30 minutes, there are a lot of questions that each one of us have that we'll go through, and then in parallel, please feel for the audience, you can keep on typing your questions in Q&A, which we'll try to pick up as part of the conversation. And the next 30 minutes, we'll also keep it exclusive for the audience to ask questions, to raise their hands, and talk to the participants here. Let me start by introducing the folks that we have today. We have Manish, founder of Wow. I think that is one consumer brand that is like a, what I will call legend as far as building a global brand from India is concerned. They are also pioneer in this space, again, the consumer brand side. We also have Sinchita, who is she's part of Amazon global selling program. So I'm sure there are a lot of questions that other founders have from her on what Amazon, how Amazon can help founders launch their global businesses. Then we have Vinay. Vinay is partner at Fireside, partner in crime also for these series that we run. Also before Fireside was a founder himself, and then prior to that spent a long career at Unilever. And then my colleague Naman and myself. So there are all these folks on the panel. Maybe we can get started by first few questions to you, Manish. Would love to know your journey of going global. What was the logic? How things have panned out for you over last few years since you plan to go global, and how you think India is different than global markets. I think that is one thing that most of the founders like to understand. So slightly broad question, and we go into details as we go along.
Thanks, Raul. Thanks, Raul, for having me on this episode of yours. I think it's always been day one for us to be a global brand. And being an internet brand, it's always, I think we are forced to go global. It's not anyways that you are limited to one geography. At least in our category, we were very clear. Fortunately, I think the story started taking inspiration from global brands, to be honest with. And the whole ideation was, and let's get back to the root or how it started off. We wanted to be a part of the internet revolution in this country. And when I say the internet revolution, it was the time when Amazon was coming to India. All credit to Flipkart during those days, but I think Amazon had a head start, at least in some of the global markets, of having listed in the categories which we were. So we started off with a health supplement brand, and we straddled our way into becoming a beauty brand too. So the inspiration obviously and aspiration obviously came from global markets. And it was the root cause was always, or the starting point was always, India is the land of Ayurveda. And why is there no way that an Indian brand can also have roots of being an international brand? So we were always very baffled that why are we so underselling ourselves as Indians that we will only sell cheap products. Obviously, we are a land of the cheapest Coca-Cola in the world, where you get cheap Coca-Cola. We were always coming for a challenge for that, but we always knew that Indian consumers deserve a lot more better. And there's a lot of opportunity for good brands. Look at some of the famous brands which they've been leading this country for many years. They always bring a lot of their SKUs which are not built for India. You'll see them either smaller pack sizes. You'll see them either strategically not bringing in some products because they always say, it's expensive and Indians won't buy it. And we always thought that, the internet is going to be one leveler for brands like us, not only to fight in our own geography, but also if you do well, you have a very good chance of going global. Remember, you being on the internet, your content, whatever you're building is viewed across the globe. Indirectly, somewhere there's leakage of data. And that's the power of the internet today. Today, you're sitting out of India and you have global demand sitting out of Madagascar, the smallest islands you can, which I've never even heard about, but consumers want to buy you. And you're getting distributors and sub-distributors from these regions reaching out to you. So I think I would like to say is that I think it's just the start of it. I think this decade is going to be India with its consumer brand stories. We as Indians have discounted ourselves too cheap. And I'm sure that this decade is going to be built with brands, not only like us, but a lot of other competing brands along the way, which should make India proud. I have no reason, and I mean, just as a starting point, we're the first Indian beauty brand to be listed in Walmart 2,800 stores. We'll soon be in Target. And just think about some of the large FMCG brands in this country. Can't mention the names. I don't think so even they wanted to get there. So I think there's nothing impossible. Possible is there. As long as you have a very open mind of giving consumers and understanding consumers what they want. So we learned a lot. I wouldn't like to say that everything was ready-made to us. We have been serial failures at our end. We have failed a lot. We failed for cheap. And we've taken the data and inputs to improve ourselves. So I think as Amazon says, it's still day one for them. It's day zero for us. So there's a long way for us to go. But the intent, I think, of anybody building brands out of India and having digital as a focus should also intend about going global. But there are a lot of hard learnings. I would love to share whatever I could at my best abilities in this call with you.
Sure. And Manish, if let's say you were to start today, and for a moment, don't assume Sinchita is in the room. What approach will you take as far as channel is concerned? Will it be Amazon.com first, your own website, other webs, marketplaces in US? And then what would you advise to?
So Rahul, I don't think so any of us, I know you guys come from the VC world and it's always de-risking and don't have all your eggs in one basket. I think those theories have to be very, I keep saying we have to be very hybrid and we have to live for today on what the realistic opportunities you have. I think the fact is very clear. Amazon's going to be, whether Sinchita was there on the call or not, I don't think so. A lot of brands you're seeing today wouldn't have been there if Amazon was not there. So all credit to them. But to be honest, how do companies like us look at Amazon? It's a great distribution company, right? At the end of the day, it's all about reaching out to your consumers. The click to action has changed so much from consumers looking at other platforms and eventually coming and buying on Amazon. And I think it's always, I think the best way forward going is wherever Amazon is there and new age brands like us is there, wherever Amazon opens the doors first, is go and capture those markets and then think about scaling elsewhere. So I think for us, it was a hybrid for us. We blended off when we started off US. We were blessed to have Ashwin as our partner who was staying out of the US. So that was always an add-on. He stayed there. I think it's more than 14 plus years today. So you always knew that he was hungry to be in that geography and we were building something out of India. And his skill set was always built about advertising on his own website and sending traffic there, right? So you like it or not, the rippling effect will always come on Amazon. So I would say it should be more of a hybrid. Depends on how much cash in the bank you have. I think we're pampered a lot in India on cheap advertising costs, logistic costs. You go outside India, you'll be paying for the air you breathe. So I think we've been spoiled for choices. Honestly, if you ask me a question, it's very difficult to answer it. It depends on the product, what you sell. It depends on the strategy you want to build. There are a lot of products which consumers, some of the sellers don't even think about building a brand out of it, but want to have a gap of opportunity where they can fill some gaps on opportunities on selling products. So it depends category to category, but always like the strategy of at least starting off with a marketplace, understanding what consumers are, and then eventually going your own brand way. That's how we also set it off. But ours was a little bit different, more towards selling on our Shopify and then eventually getting stronger on the other platforms. So it depends on case to case. But I think for young brands who have very less infrastructure support in the US, I think the best way forward is going through a marketplace and understanding your customers. We learned a lot. what you sell in India doesn't mean will sell in the US. So it's hard learnings for us, and it's taken us years for us to understand. We continue to learn every day.
Got it.
And I love the line on, you're not going to live for today and then figure out tomorrow. And this hybrid approach of yours. Manish, quick question on, complexity. And especially for young entrepreneurs starting out, etc., what would be your advice or your guidance? You obviously have been like a bellwether. You've been like, before D2C was a buzzword, you were there and you kind of like shown the way to a lot of people. But if somebody were to start today and they were to take on a challenge where they have to win in India, which you have done, and win globally, would it be sequential? Would it be hybrid like the channel choice that you talked about? Or would it be more win in one geography, build your muscle, and then kind of look at expansion overseas?
See, when I'll just start a little bit off target. Would like to tell everyone, whoever's on in the show, that if there's a Chinese whisper here and somebody asks you, are you a brand? And I would say, no, I'm not yet a brand, but I'm a brand in creation, because brands are built long term. And now it's a very interesting question you've asked me. Which strategy would work? Which geography? India, US? It all depends on. And I have told you one thing. What works in India for us doesn't mean it works globally. They're two different channels, two different consumers, two different lots, culturally different. We have learned a lot, colors, fonts, granular moves to understand consumers. It's a total different ballgame. Understanding consumers. As I told you, we're the land of the cheapest Coca-Cola. So entrepreneurs like us always think about cheap to a customer, right? But in the US and the other geographies, it's bigger pack sizes. Charge me more, but give me something big. So we learned all this over time. My move to anybody who ever goes is dream big, but be realistic about how you can reach there. Because the US or any other markets are expensive to build. And I've always believed in one thing: be a master of one thing, than being a jack of everything which is possible and not being anywhere. Be either US you choose or you choose India, but be one significant player in one place, and the rippling effects on the mirroring effect across other. As I told you, we are global brands today because our digital content is shared. My strategy remains very linear in that way. Build one place large, whatever you turn out on profits a little bit around, try experimental markets, and then scale from there. So we are a little bit, we don't get excited with money in the bank and scale immediately. We like to have a ploy, build businesses which have very strong fundamentals, understand customers very deep. It's not about marketing budgets for us. It's about how do you continue to engage with the customer and be connected with them long term. That's something where we think about. And I get this question a lot of times, how do we do it? And I continue to touch base a lot. Get your product correct. And that's the first part before you spend any strategy or building businesses. Remember, we are consumers, and we are human beings. It's only a difference of color, hair types, in our field at least, which we saw differences on. But it's a consumer, most of it. We also got, at least we're sharing a little bit for you guys to understand what works for us in India. So we have also broken up in geographies, which product in which region does well, what water suits a customer better. So we get a little bit more granular to understand customers. I think get your art corrected in India. You'll build it for cheap here. And then I think you can master global attraction easily. See, look at today. We can sit out of India and run large businesses in Middle East, even in the US. You can have one or two people be sitting out of any of these regions and still conquer large businesses. That's the beauty of the internet today. So my strategy is always a little bit, I won't say cautious, I'm always a bull, but we like to understand a little bit more on customers in any region. And I continue to emphasize, get your product correct, because different geographies have different climatic, water, salt, etc. Before you look at them, that's in our field, so I can only answer that. But we get a little bit more deeper on understanding product efficacies in these regions, and then starting to hit the scale button. But
Got it.
I always strongly believe that build one geography large, whatever you can pull out of the profits and put into other regions to understand small, that's the way to go.
Got it. Sanchita, turning over to you, I'm assuming everybody on this panel knows that Amazon is promoting brands to go global. But if you go to the next level, beauty has been talked about a lot. What are the other categories today and tomorrow you foresee where large brands can be built outside India? As in brands from India going global?
Yeah. Sure. So I think I'll divide that question, into three parts. There are three main categories that Amazon really looks at when looking at brands going global. So it's largely consumables, which would have beauty, health and personal care, baby, grocery, hard lines, which would have home improvement, office products, kitchen, and all of those. And then we have soft line, which is going to be your jewelry, luggage, your apparel, all of those things, right? So one of the fastest growing categories actually for Indian players specifically, I'm going to talk about what we've seen on our platform is actually consumables. We've seen brands grow faster than the platform actually there. So and very interestingly, Indian grocery has a very good demand in US. Specifically because you've seen these countries, they have a very good offline channel. There are grocery stores spread out, who are specifically looking at Indian groceries, selling Indian groceries. So, if they're getting it at the ease of Amazon, why not? So that is a very, very attractive category. So, in the top segments here largely would be nuts and dry fruits, tea, coffee, masalas is a huge segment, oils, pulses, sweet snacks, the Haldirams of the world. I mean, they are doing really well, on the platform. So that's something there. In beauty, of course, I think Wow is driving the growth there, and Manish would be privy to that. Anyway, apart from that, I think Ayurvedic, organic, herbal beauty. I think this is something which Manish also touched on before. That's doing extremely well. They have a lot of demand in these global marketplaces, and India has a very good supply there as well. So beauty category, I think it has a huge potential. We are seeing multiple, beauty emerging brands getting interested in the global markets and doing well also out there, right? Like Ayurveda is a big category there. So why not take Indian brands who are specialized in that category and look at those. So I'll quickly move on, probably, and just give you some a sense in terms of health and personal care. So herbal supplements, any sort of herbal mineral supplements, diet supplements, multivitamins. Again, it's US is a very mature market in that category, and even if a new player can get a small pie of the share, I think it's going to be huge, right? So that's something which is doing really well. Moving on quickly to hard lines, I think this is a very interesting category. Home, kitchen, bath linen, they're the top categories for India, specifically in the space of home and bedding. Since India has the strength in cotton, it's doing really well. Specifically, cotton, which has a higher thread count. They are doing really well from Indian players. Interestingly, also toys is a very up and coming segment, and especially looking at the COVID pandemic and the how behaviors have changed for toys, board games, card games, educational and STEM toys. They are doing really well from India. There are players like Play Shifu, Skillmatics, who are growing phenomenally on the platform, right? So that's there. For quickly going on to soft lines and looking at apparel, jewelry. I think jewelry. Fine jewelry like diamond, Indian diamond is really famous, right? Fine jewelry does better than fashion jewelry per se. In terms of shoes, any seller who can look at running shoes, walking shoes, that has a huge demand in the US if they can be price competitive. Um, Also, apparel segment, we've seen basically because of this pandemic, we've seen a little bit of a twist in terms of what is preferred. So athleisure wear, pajama sets, they are doing really well. So those are some categories which are really building out, and this is specifically for Indian sellers. So I mean, in a nutshell, I think Indian sellers and Indian brands have a potential across all categories that Amazon is present on, right? And we've seen success stories in each one of those. So that's how we see the whole opportunity pan out.
I had a follow on there. In general, when we look at entrepreneurs who are trying to build brands for global, Their next port of call is usually the .com, the US website. And obviously, Amazon has presence across multiple other geographies. So if you could help us understand, what other geographies are interesting, where is their demand, which is brand stuffed, what other geographies apart from .com, because it's a large market, but it's highly competitive as well.
Yeah.
What could be attractive for entrepreneurs? You've given us a very good idea of the categories.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Yeah, no, you're right, Vinay. US is the biggest one for us and obviously the most competitive. But overall, the Amazon Global Selling Program, it actually gives you access to 17 marketplaces, right? So essentially, when we say when you register for a .com, you also get access to Canada and Mexico. So largely it is North America, Europe, Middle East, Japan, Australia, Singapore, those are the markets. But to give you a little bit nuances about the size of these markets and for Amazon what it means. So Amazon, of course, US is the biggest market that we have. It's followed by Germany, UK, and then Japan. So that's how we are placed. While US is the most mature and the most structured in terms of the seller experiences for us. So it's like approximately more than $200 billion, right? The entire platform. It's growing at in a like more than 40%, right? Europe, on the other hand, divided into, of course, UK and PAN, the other remaining parts of the European countries. UK is a $40 billion market for us, very strong growth of around more than 60%. And these are all approximate figures, PAN EU, the whole number is like it's a $60 billion market, like across all the categories, right? And growing again at a 40% market, 40% growth rate. Middle East is something which is we are very new in, but we just acquired Souq.com in May 2019. But that's a market which is, probably just about $1 billion right now. But its growth rates are like in triple digits because obviously it's a smaller size. And in these markets we've seen Indian sellers doing very well, especially because the Indian diaspora there's a huge Indian diaspora there. Purchase behaviors are very similar. Right, so categories like electronics, health and personal care, skincare, they're doing really well. And like I mentioned, for Europe also, the best-selling categories are home, anything to do with home, sports, health and personal care, toys, groceries. So these are sort of trends. So it's not just US that we're into. We have matured markets everywhere, and the program actually gives you access to more than 17 markets.
Interesting. And Sinchita, if you can, for benefit of the viewers here, in India, there is a certain gross margin, there is a certain AOV one should expect to be at least to make money on these orders that they get shipped online. What would be similar benchmarks one should be okay with, and how much should one assume AOVs can be or should be? What margin should one have? What return or what at least marketing spend should one assume when they're going to, let's say, specifically geography like US?
Right. No, so I think that it's not a straightforward answer here. It depends on a few things. So firstly, it depends on the operational model that you have, right? So there are two types which exist. One is you can park your inventory in your destination market, which is, you have your inventory in Amazon Fulfillment Center, right? So that is where you have to lock a certain amount of inventory when you launch there, and you keep it at the warehouse. So that is your inventory cost, right? The other way is, if you launch through a merchant fulfillment network, which means you service your end customers directly from India. But to give you another sense is that the strategic sellers that we have, the growing sellers, I mean, more than 90% of them are in the fulfillment by Amazon model. So that is one part of the cost, right? But also the advertising spend, I think it depends on category to category. We've seen some brands going as high as 50% in the starting months, and then tapering down. We've seen some brands, look at some organic growth and then taking the pushing the pedal there. But what we always recommend is, going heavy in spends in the first few months and then, like optimizing your campaigns, optimizing your spends. So it's not a flat answer. It really depends on category to category. But, to just give you an example, probably the category of food, right? We always suggest have at least a minimum spend of 15 to 20% in terms of marketing. right? And whatever costs are built up from Amazon's end, that's over and above, your cost, your FOPs plus your profit. So I think there's a huge margin there and depends on category. So that's how it is structured.
They mentioned about Indian. Sorry, when I go ahead. Yeah.
No, please go ahead.
You mentioned about Indian diaspora being very active in the Middle East. Have you seen similar trends when in the US market as well, when Indian brands tries to grow, global? Is it Indian diaspora who is the first set of customers, or have you seen other people also accepting Indian brands?
No, I think it's both ways. It works both ways, and I think Manish can add in his insights here for WOW, right? But we've seen it's not typically, you can't really expect that only an Indian will buy your product. We've seen it the other ways actually. Americans buying Indian products.
I think that's so unfair, right? It is so unfair. It's not the first time I've heard this question, and our survey said there were less than 10% of consumers in the US buying who are Indian, or less than even 10. And I think that's so unfair. We have been asked this question. And see, this is a pure example of us discounting ourselves.
Yeah.
Manish, you mentioned that if somebody is trying to start off and build a global brand, obviously use the channel, it's efficient, and then kind of expand from there, etc. But how does one think about consumer inciting, off positioning, off platform media mix? Any thoughts there, especially for brands that are trying to start off or just trying to find their footing in a global market?
If you ask me, consumers are completely different in two different geographies. We learned it along the way, from our fonts to the colors to what the efficacy to the fragrance to everything. They're different. But remember, we are humans, so we're almost there. But the likes and dislikes are completely different. What we have learned as what Indians and other people of the other geographies might like. So always you try small, fail for cheap. So we keep trying, keep tweaking, get a lot of consumer insight, and then you get things going correct. So I would say, see, you have to use your communication tools with customers, may it be reviews, may it be use communication, your surveys, in a very right spirit. And most of us get it wrong as a starting point to see the difference. Again, I'll just tell you how we guys think. Whenever we have thought about building things ourselves and thinking customers will buy it, we have failed. But whenever we have built things what customer wants, we have done well. So that continues to happen across geographies, across product lines for us. So the US team will pick up and say, you know what? The fonts need to be changed, but now you're building a brand architecture, I can't change that. So there's a lot of other things of look and feel what an American would want to see is what you have to be really fast to adapt towards if you're trying to build it in that scale. And see, today being digital, you've got that speed and agility to do those kind of changes. So even on the ads, the ad sets are completely different. What works in the US doesn't work in India. A lot is different. So you have to continue to try and fail for cheap, continue to try, have a heart to fail. So you have to have budgets in your mind that, I'm going to fail with this, but I'm going to come back at the end of the day victorious to understand that better. And when I redo my ad sets or do my refresh on my products, I'll be able to do a much better job towards understanding. So when we started, we were all over the place, all right? So I can give you tons of failures. I don't remember my successes, but I will just give you a list of failures. And the list of failures have only got improved once you take customer insight in place. Have a team of understanding your customers a little bit more. Obviously, in India and US is different. India, I can just pick up a call and speak to a customer, and a customer can spend 30 minutes with me on a phone call. All right. In the US, they don't have that. That culture is not there. So the speed at which we were connecting was not what we were getting the connection in India, because your speed to customers completely different in these two geographies. So we do try out. We are just giving an example in the US, to just get a survey, we would throw in a coupon code with a customer just to understand what do you want to see us do better. And you would get at least 600 to 700 filling those forms, right? Then you go down to maybe R&D, maybe go down to your marketing team, improve along that. So see, it's very much possible, but it has to be a plan. But just giving expectation levels, the way how we grow fast in India, is not what you can expect out of the US, because US is a heavy guarded wall. US getting data, how you use data is completely different than what the laws in this country is. So it's I wish I could have a longer time with you guys, but wherever we can, I think Sinchita knows anybody reaching out to Sinchita. Sinchita can also connect them to Ashwin, and I'll give the limelight to Ashwin a lot for where we are in the US product and a lot of other strategies. I do give my views. But on the advertising cost, let's start about it. It's nowhere close to what you get in India. It's much expensive. And I must also give I should give a free tip, and people should value that. Pricing strategy, quantity sizing is completely different than what is in India and USA. And I'll tell you, 90% of the guys who go global on Amazon, 90 fail on it and never go back and sell their products again because the strategy is not there. So one is price your what you sell in India. That doesn't mean that you go and sell the same price in the US. You always take a little bit more markup because you've got a heavy advertising cost. And let's be honest about it. In the US, it's all about advertising and reaching out to the customer. So lots of people lose out a lot of money because they don't understand where the product cost and pricing should be. So in some markets obviously India is a volume market, price sensitive market. That doesn't mean globally we go and have that same pricing. No, we do take a premium on that. Obviously you give a value to a customer more for that, because what will happen then if you don't have a strategy or you don't have a different label, then the Indian scalpers will destroy your US business. That means a guy buying it on Amazon India, he'll start drop shipping it in the US. So you got to be sharp on your strategy. Because there's a lot of products of ours which is not being sold in India, just to ensure that the scalpers don't take advantage. So we learned all this, and we had a time where every day we were sending legal notices. I remember, I think we have more than 100 plus legal notices we have sent Indian sellers that you can't send our products out. So strategies have to be very defined. It's very ambitious to go online. I think Sinchita can tell you this fact. But it has to be a play on how do you product price it. And most of them get it very wrong. And that's a very wrong starting point. A lot of people get discouraged on selling it is because the pricing strategy is completely wrong.
Got it. Very interesting. Manish, one question, I think you alluded to it. Let's say you are starting today. In terms of team, do you think one needs some skill sets from US to start building a brand in US?
To be honest, we do have, but a lot still happens in India. We in fact moved a bunch of our talented teams into Toronto, which is the epicenter for both the sides of the geography. But I would say, I think Bala is an example. I think he's got a couple of guys in the US. I think go lean and thin. See, we're an e-commerce business. I don't think so. We require people on street unless you have an offline strategy. Most of the business, and today I think US is more open towards e-commerce than the rest of the world, and eventually we'll fall. But if you've got the budget, there's no harm to know about it, because that inside of that market is so important that a person sitting out of that place will tell you that. We learned a lot hiring a lot of folks in that region, that what works in India and what kind of product packaging, our communication, and what the American audience wanted to hear was completely different. And I think these are some very important, investment for your business. At least try to get a very lean team who can give you some insight into it. It's always valuable. But I would like to go and say, have all guns blazing and build a big team out of that. It's not required. But at least get some good insight, content creators, some of the product guys sitting out of that. 2 or 3 important guys who turn the wheel for you as a good starting point into any of the geographies you're looking at scaling.
And what would be, like, for example, for a young brand, the top 2 or 3 skill sets that they should hire onshore?
See, I think most of anybody getting serious on getting a hire in those geographies serious about scaling. And I think it's e-commerce is the best way to start. So looking at those, I think getting your content creator, get some of your performance marketing guys, because you'll want to sell on Amazon, you will want to sell on Shopify, There's a complete different skill set of guys doing your AMS and your sponsored ad in the US, which you require. So I think it's very important you get your content, your at least performance marketing guy. And I think the second step should be a supply chain guy who comes on board in that region helping you out, because he needs to pick up the phone, speaks to your warehouse, your third-party warehouses where you'll be housing your products in. So I think these are your phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, because that's the way to go. I think content and performance guys sitting out of that, they'll also give you insight, a little bit more localization of what can happen. Like example, if you're looking at a home improvement, somebody can tell you what exactly is going on in a Marshalls or in a Target in the US, give you a little bit more insight on how well you can do it. So I think these are good starting points for you to really start off on a team, which we at least started off on.
Got it. And would you, and this is a question to both of you, would you suggest having separate social media pages, Insta pages and all, which is very geography specific, or because there are pros and cons, right? You have to build new followership, new view, but and content has to be different. So what do you suggest we should do?
We are always looking at the easy way in, right? So as I told you, there are two different geographies. You have to respect the culture. And when I started off this discussion, what works in India doesn't work in the US. What works in the US doesn't work in India. Ever since this Made in India revolution has happened, I think seeing white skin and seeing other cultural images in your Instagram in India, you get slack for. All right. So I think you have to be very cognizant about building two different followership in two different geographies. We've been strong about that. I think it's hard work. But remember one thing, there's no use of any followership in any page of yours if you don't have a good engagement in those regions. So we are always looking at the tough way to start. I think two different content strategy in two different geographies just gives a little bit more of a localization, seriousness of your brand in a geography to your consumers on that side. I think Sanchita can answer that at her experience, what she's seen.
No, 100%. I think, the audiences are different, right? So if you want to dedicatedly focus on social media, I think it has to be separate. Like we've seen multiple brands who've done it successfully for it to be separate. Like, there's as a platform also, Amazon, supports social media codes, which you can generate and put it up. But if you're putting it out on your India page, I think the conversions are not going to be as high. Your Indian diaspora is not going to go shop in .com, right? So yeah, keep it separate, keep it different. They are completely different.
Example, features in the US with features in India, way different than what you can get in India. A lot. May it be on Facebook, may it be on Instagram. I think the features there are way, way superior than what we get in India. So I think it has to be a very holistic view. So these are some important tools for people who are serious about building brands outside. Somebody who's just trying, I wouldn't say go and try doing it because it's going to be tough. But at least the way forward is to have, once you're a serious brand, is to have communication in different and keeping a set of ad creatives, content, which is very localized.
Got it. Sanchita,
sorry, there's a question, Sanchita, both for you and Manish as well. And maybe it is politically loaded, but I'll go ahead and ask it anyway. We've been hearing that, especially post-COVID, for example, on Amazon, they were, I think, about $70-100 million cross-border Chinese brands that were selling on Amazon, and a whole bunch of other which were slightly smaller. And post-COVID, obviously, there's a sentiment change, and lots of people are looking for a China plus one strategy, especially for the supply chains, consumer preferences, etc. Are you seeing some of that? How do you see that emerging, especially from India for global brand? And Manish, for you as a follow-on, are you seeing some of that play out in the demands that you're seeing on your brand?
Sanchita, for you?
Yeah, so I'll go on that first. I think definitely, it depends on the brand to brand. We've seen some brands which are still dependent on their, Chinese manufacturers. to send goods worldwide, right? Like, to be honest, that has not changed, and I can't name any brands here that has not changed. Their dependencies can't move as easily. But most of the brands that we work with actually, manufacture within India, and they send it out. I think there are certain regulations and norms that they have to cater to now. Look, especially mentioning the country of origin. So yeah, from a two-part question from a seller's perspective, we've not seen any sellers looking at a drastic pivot in terms of completely stopping manufacturing suppliers and all of that. In terms of the strategy of recruiting more Indians and harping on the sentiment of getting Indian brands global, I think we've seen a huge upsurge there. Now we are getting many brands interested. Now they're really understanding the ecosystem and they want to explore that. And I wouldn't, it would be wrong to say that the pandemic is not a part of that reason. With the pandemic coming in, I think many brands are realizing the importance of the e-commerce offline channel, and then as an extension to that, it becomes e-commerce exports as a channel, right? So we've seen those kind of trends changing. However, on a now to look at it from the platform side, from Amazon side, I think we've not seen any change there. And I can't reveal too much, but I mean it's too early also to to look at the trends that how are the sentiments changing. But those are some from the perspectives of Indian brands and how they are associated. Yeah, over to you, Manish.
So I'll just give you from a brand side, what does the world really think about Made in India to start with? I can't comment much about China because at our end we are looking at how do we de-risk ourselves from China every day. But let me just share some insight. All right. We are a land of Ayurveda. We are a land of yoga. I don't know how often you guys go to the US, but I think yoga is more adapted in the US than in India. All right. So we don't value what we want and what we build from the country. All right. Any by lane or any of the high streets in the US will have a yoga. So I think Made in India products in the US are well respected to start with. I don't remember, I read a lot of my social media handles. I don't see even one anti against Made in India kind of propaganda, which we always were scared of. That was something which, Ashwin was very scared of, and we were thinking about how do we have redundancy on our manufacturing. And we were looking at creative ideas of just to have made in the USA, we were looking at building up a factory in Puerto Rico, right? And our biggest raw material of this country, for our products, is water. And it was ridiculous for us to ship containers of water and our apple cider vinegar there. Till the time we really, we realized that, we are well accepted. And that's why I continue to say that this decade is going to be of Indian consumers going global. And I don't remember reading that we are discriminated, that it's a Made in India and there's an anti-propaganda about buying us. If you get in any of Marshalls or Target or any of these Sephoras in the US, almost all the aromatherapy, maybe tea tree oil, maybe any of the other essential oils, you'll see proudly an American brand, but at the back, Made in India. All right. And I did see that across. I'm not talking about full-fledged Indian brand on the shampoos and body washes, an example, but we are there. We are not large there, but I don't see that there's a reason for anybody to be worried that, it's a Made in India product and there could be a propaganda. Let's be honest about it. US is a consumer market. And I think the economy will adapt and also accept global brands, maybe from India or rest of the world. So I don't see there's an anti-India propaganda as what happens for China or whatever, but I think we are safe to build large businesses in these geographies, consumer businesses in these geographies.
Great. Since we only have 15 more minutes, while we did ask a lot of questions from what audience had posted, let's move to allowing people to ask questions directly also. So anybody who's interested can please, raise their hands, and then we'll call them one by one. My one request is that please ask only the question, and if you can direct it to one person on this panel, that will be easier versus everybody trying to answer. Otherwise, we'll not be able to, take everybody in there. So I'll just add. Sorry.
I already added the Dr.
Okay, Naman, you are doing it. Great. Dharinder, please go ahead.
Yeah, my question is to Manish. Manish, two small things. One, you had said that you have to mark up. So in your space, what is the kind of markup that you feel between the Indian pricing and the US pricing? And just sorry. And also the regulatory aspect, particularly for the beauty and wellness products, the regulatory aspect in the US, if you could throw some light on that.
So let me just, the whole question is, how do you know your product pricing? And that's very important for you to have ground reality check on what is your price fit with competing brands. So we built it a long time. I wouldn't like to say we mastered it. I think for a couple of years we were in the blind side. But usually, I would say, depending on the quantity and per ml size and the premiumness on what you give, I think there's a fair gap where you could price your product at 2 to 3 times more than India. One is, remember that the logistic costs, your handling costs, which you pay nothing in India, is charged there. So you have to have that input cost into it. So my starting point would be that do a lot of recce, do a lot of customer insight. I think today Amazon helps you do a lot of analysis on who's got the best pricing, what should be your strategy around. So I don't think so there's anything hidden. You'll also get a lot of third-party tools, which I think, I'm not too sure whether Sinchita can officially talk about it, but you get third-party tools which will also tell you where you should be and what pricing it should be at. Second, on the regulatory point of view, I think the ease of doing business in the US is way easier than anywhere else. So I'll give you a comparison. There are 1,108 banned ingredients in Europe versus which is 10 in the US. So that just shows it. But remember one thing, US is a heavily risky consumer market. If you don't get your liability insurances in place, some of these investments, if you don't do, you can be charged a lot. So I would say ease of doing business is all fine, but when you're small, it all works. But once you become large, you must consider some of these safety tools for you on the regulatory part. At least at our part, we are FDA approved in a lot of places. We have taken, at customs, we have it. We have gone the right way. A lot of people don't do it till the time they get caught. But if you get caught, you are really penalized. But ease of doing business is much easier than anywhere else in the world, is what our experience till now is. So tough markets for us have been Europe to start with. They've got tons and tons of paperwork, but the ease of doing business in the US at a cost, I always say at a cost, is completely different than any other part of the world.
Great. Akshay, you want to go next?
Yeah. So I've got 2 questions, both for Manish. Manish, when dealing with platforms like Amazon, DMarts and all, when we are placing our products, what I've noticed is when you initially place your products, it's all fine. But as soon as your category starts picking up, normally Amazon and all these major players, they start coming up with private labels. And then it becomes big misfit where you have to probably bid for the listing space. So how do you think brands should adopt their strategy in terms when they are going global? Should they always have their own channels also open, their direct channels?
So I have this theory since long. I think Sinchita is going to smile over it. I think we'll worry about it when Mr. Bezos leaves marketplace and starts building private labels as his focus. As his main agenda. Till that time, we all can breathe easy. But let's be honest about it. People are going to come. It's their own platform. I don't think so. We should fear that today Amazon's using data and other people are going to misuse what we are building. Remember one thing: you're building a brand and you need to have a big heart about it. And I think that the intent should be, how do I be better than them? Then worrying about they're going to come and cannibalize us. So I have a theory. The day when Mr. Bezos thinks about building private label large, that's when I'll worry. But as of now, I think even Sinchita will know it's a team which every 2 years you'll find a new face. And I think only few categories to be honest, Amazon's run phenomenally well, but somewhere there's required a personalization, and where that I think you should be very proud as being a founder, and a founder's love will take a lot more than what an organization is trying to build a private label. So we are building founder's love, which I don't think so any company can take away from you. So let's think about it in 2030. It's too early for us right now. Look at the opportunity ahead.
Great. Aditya, you want to go next?
Sure. Thanks, Rahul. Hey, Manish, again, this is for you.
Sanjita, come on, you got to take this over from me now.
Okay, Sanjita, feel free to reply to this. So Manish, you mentioned that what you're trying to localize here when I asked you the question that, what sort of talent you're looking for overseas. You mentioned quite surprisingly that you're looking for performance marketers and even like people who run EMS, performance marketing on EMS to hire them locally. In my experience, Indian performance marketing agencies are, yes, cheaper. And because it's so data driven, that you can really like sort of optimize your campaigns sitting from anywhere globally, right? So why do you think that you should hire someone there? Because we already are working with the agency here, and I would be tempted to think that, we could use the same agency services and their expertise to sort of sell in US. And we just did a small launch in US, and we are just running some experiments there. Like you said, some thoda profit, we're putting it out there. So I just want to know, why do you think hiring a local performance marketing agency?
I'll give this answer again. I don't look at the easy way out. Now, starting as base, let's start about the fundamentals, all right? My designer who designs all my product labels is not an Indian, to start with. Why did I not choose that? I love my country. I love the talent which is there. We have to always look at being unique. And why did I build a team outside the country at more expensive? Because, somebody sitting out of another part of the world has different creative ideas and different skill sets. See, we are as Indians going back to the same grocery store, same chemists, same hypermarkets, supermarkets. Our brain doesn't move beyond some creativity, all right? And I continue to believe that same even on building content and your ad sets outside this country. Now, telling you again about it, these are local individuals who sit outside their country, outside our country where we are coming from. They understand their consumers way much than what a computer can understand. And we sitting 10,000 miles away from there, on giving you a much more understanding of how consumers think about product, advertising. Grammar is completely different. It's completely different. Yeah. This is where we all get things a lot wrong. We have done the same way on the PR agencies we use. It's very much from the US or wherever we get into those, because they think totally localized. We are looking right now as Indians because it's cheap. I'm not talking about cheap. I'm talking about do small. You can start small with a guy with a very basic skill set. US is all about hourly billing, uses skills for 3 hours a day or a weekly basis. You just have a little bit more different what that kind of audience looks than what an Indian sitting out of India will think about another market. I love my country. I'll continue to promote it. I am a strong believer that AI and all the other stuff is long way away for us to have these kind of skill sets remotely. But you must have some kind of investment in these channels, at least in building a brand, on having some individuals who understand their country much better. You will see a lot of FMCG companies from India who've got people sitting out of Middle East and Africa origin, right? These are expats not expat, but these are guys hired from there. They understand the local markets, and it's the same for even digital marketers.
Interesting. Sanjita,
thank you so much. Yeah.
There is a question for you from the panel, which is, how does one go about brand building in addition to selling on Amazon? And are there any additional tools and support that Amazon provides to help break the clutter beyond pricing and couponing and kind of playbook?
Sure. Yeah, so thanks for the question. I think Amazon has a dedicated program for emerging brands as such, which encompasses the entire gamut of pre-launch, launch, post-launch. So we'll start with the basics of helping you understand the models that you can look at, the operational setup for you, helping you with your pricing and product strategy. I think that's the start, right? Once you've gotten your head around that, I think we have a set of more than 500 legal and compliance service providers, who will actually help you get export ready, so to say, because we've seen, especially for emerging brands, understanding the labeling guidelines, certifications, FDA certification, FDA cosmetic certification. That's a big barrier, and we have our set of partners who work with hundreds of brands over and over again to get that going. So we give you assistance there. Of course, I think once all this is sorted, assistance in terms of getting your listings done, getting your getting you access to some early reviewer programs, getting you access to some wine voices for us. That's something we do as well. And of course, once you go live, we work very closely with you to see how we can give you that jump start in terms of registering your first sales, helping you with the advertisement, seeing what visibility levers we can drive for you. I think this is what the team does. We have a team which has geography experts and category experts. So the 17 marketplaces that I was talking about as part of the program, we have specific geography and category experts in each of these, who look at the entire life cycle for you. This is from the people front. In terms of the tools available as well, if you get access to Amazon brand registry, which is the tool to protect your listings, file for infringements, which probably Manish would have used to file those, get those sellers to stop selling wow initially. We also have certain tools which can give you an understanding of what keywords are doing well, what are people searching in each of these geographies, and these are all at your assistant 24 hours. So anytime you can access it, look at these reports, and let me give you an example. For example, we earlier we used to see our sellers in the home category space, right? They used to go mostly for bed sheet sets, which were China manufacturers, and they would have like a huge dominance in terms of price point advantage, right? But basis our strategic selection focus, basis our machine learning models, we suggested that they pivot into fitted sheets and kids bedding SKUs, which the brands have never thought of, right? So we give a lot of we work as partners with the brands, to see what are the new launches that they can do. There's another brand which is just launched only table runners and table sheets per se, but through the insights that we got, the brand is now looking at expanding into curtains, beds and beddings. So it's more strategic in a partnership, along with also the operational element. So it's the entire help that you get from the Amazon ecosystem. I would say it's not just limited to the specific ones that you spoke about. Actually,
interesting.
One question I think someone posted earlier: does one need to set up a US entity, if you want to go there, and at what point of time is it required?
Sorry, who's that question to?
Sorry,
I can answer.
Manish can answer that, yeah, or Sinja, you can answer that.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer from an Amazon point of view, and then Manish can come in. So no, to start with, US has very low entry barriers. You don't need a US entity. You can begin with your India entity itself. So like Manish was mentioning earlier, the barrier to entry in US is very, very low. And at what point you should start a US entity, I think there's no right answer to that. I'll leave that to Manish basis his journey. You're on mute, Manish.
Manish, you're
on mute.
No, so we started off always with a Florida-based entity. I think the state tax was the lowest amongst all. It's too early for me to just tell you. Depends on the stage of your business. If you take US business serious, you should have a US corp. It has advantages. But I think, as Sinchita told you, ease of doing business via US account. I think I've heard a lot of successful stories of people doing that and scaling large. But it depends on what stage of the business and what's your ambition plan to go there. It depends on it. But we chose the route of going with a local corp entity based out of Florida, and that's where we started off from.
Got it. Great. I think this was amazing. We are done for the hour. So thanks a ton, Manish, Sanchita, and rest of the folks who joined us here. Hope I learned a lot. as you know, what looked like a simple business from India to US, clearly a lot of things to take care of. But thanks for sharing insights, both Manish and Sanchita.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
This hour could go on for quite longer. The discussions are so interesting, but we'll respect your time. But Manish, thanks so much for inspiring a lot of D2C brands, and I think inspiring us as well to actually start supporting them.
Thank you.
Sanchita, thanks so much for being here, giving us your time, and helping so many brands go global. Hopefully, like Manish said, this will be the decade where Indian brands really make a splash globally, and hopefully you can be a part of it to help Indian brands go global. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Yeah.